Greetings, Internet, and welcome back for the second episode of Putting Shells on Shelves. And of course, the neighbor's dog's still going to continue to bark, but whatever. If that dog wants to yip yap, then I'm just going to keep on yapping away myself. For today's episode, we're basically going to be just talking about the very first wave from 1988, the original 10 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures ever released by Playmates Toys. So, actually, before we delve into that, I wanted to kind of bring up a little something that predates the Ninja Turtles and actually almost sank Playmates Toys, the people who created, well, the people who made the toy versions of the Turtles all the way back in the 80s. Now, some of you, well, depending on your age range, there are a lot of you who know of the toy Teddy Ruxpin. It was a little robotic cassette tape playing bear. You'd put the tape in his back, you'd turn on the thing, and it would do like the sparkly blah, come dream with me tonight. You'd start off singing like that, and he would introduce himself. So Playmates Toys, within that year, or within the next couple of years, decided that they were going to make their own version of that toy. Originally, they started off making a little blonde girl talking doll in the same vein of Teddy Ruxpin. And that apparently did okay, so they made a little brother for her, whom y'all have seen before, but, for people who are new to my channel, I'll bring him back out. One of the two dolls that inspired none other than Chucky from the Child's Play series, Corky. So, and yes, this thing was made by Playmates Toys. There was also a third doll in the series, or in the set, called Julie, and she was a lot more functional. She did a lot more things. Like with these dolls, all they do is the eyes will move and the mouth will go like blah 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 blah, blah and it'd be kind of synced up with the cassette tape. And this Julie doll that was part of that set, she could actually like move her torso, and she could kind of like move back and forth like this, and she could move her arms like this kind of. But anyway, something about those dolls just hurt Playmates Toys to the point where they just kind of dropped out of the electronics market. They weren't even comfortable making an electronic doorbell, for corning's sake. But then, when Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were trying to take their comic book, which, for any of you who don't know by this point, but I mean like everyone and their brother has been talking about this for ages, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started off back as a comic book, an independent comic book, back in the 80s. Obviously it was the 80s, but I'm trying to remember the year. It was between like 83 and 84, somewhere in there. And then the comic book was actually starting to take off a bit, and it got the attention of someone, I forget who. If you want to know the entire origin story of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or at least a very good version of it, feel free to go and watch the Toys That Made Us episode on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, by the way, not sponsored. And they talked about this and went over this far better than I ever could. But, so like I was saying, they started that comic book, and then they started getting a little bit of attention, and they wound up being able to take their concept to a couple of different toy companies, because they decided that they wanted to have action figures of the characters, I think. I could be wrong, it's been a while since I've watched that, but that's the way I remember it. Then again, I was not there. So, they shopped the... Oops-a-daisy, I knocked over a thing. They shopped the idea around to a bunch of different companies, and a lot of them said no because they didn't think this idea would work. because at the time, just the whole concept was just like, no, that's stupid. Get out of here. Get out of my office. But then, Playmates Toys, who I believe was just kind of desperate and trying to get into the boys' toy market, was like, sure, we can do that. We can do that. We can give that a shot. And so they wound up, through trial and error, coming up with these 10 different figures that would be released to the public, and these things sold like hotcakes. Now, if you're wondering why I'm gesturing at the table and saying these 10 figures, that's because, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else, I have a complete set of the first 10 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures right here, just out of frame. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So, like I said, Playmates Toys went from talking dolls. Cricket was the name of the first doll, then there was Corky, then there was Julia, then they dropped all that shtick altogether, and then they moved on to this, I think. Anyway, regardless, somehow they got into the Ninja Turtles, and here we are. Now, as stated, there were 10 figures originally released, and those figures were the titular quartet of Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and, of course, Raphael. But where would the Fab Four of the 90s be without their sensei, Master Splinter? Then, of course, we had the Ninja Turtles' friend/love interest, depending on what version of the Turtles you're referring to, April O'Neil. This is one of the first couple of releases of her, but we'll get into that later. Then, what are your heroes without their bad guys? So they also released the Shredder. His foot ninjas, his robotic foot ninjas. And of course, everyone's favorite duo of bumbling henchmen, Bebop and his buddy, Rocksteady. Now, when these things were first released, they just kind of flew off the shelves. These things were selling like hotcakes, at least according to the Toys That Made Us episode referring to these. One moment, my voice is going out again. Okay, so like I was saying, these things were flying off the shelves like hotcakes. And this was really good for Playmates and for Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, because they had like the majority share in all this, I think. They were getting a bunch of money from the sales of these, along with the sales of the comic books. And the toys and the comics were kind of, feeding off of each other. But then, here's the big thing. The thing that really solidified Ninja Turtles in the eyes of all the fans, of all the little kids who started seeing these things and were like, Mommy, can I get that? Mommy, I gotta have Michelangelo! You know, kids like just saying and getting all the toys and stuff. Was the cartoon. Which everyone knows by this point in time. The original 1987 cartoon, most refer to it as having come out in 1988, but it originally premiered at the end of 1987, I believe. My memory is a little shaky on that. Editing me put right down here the year that the original Ninja Turtles cartoon first premiered. Right there. Anyway, so these things led to, well, the comic led to the toys led to the cartoon, and here's part of the reason why I bring up the cartoon and the toys and the comic all together. If you've ever noticed, these action figures don't really look like the characters from the show. That's because these little dudes and dudette were based off of the image, the look of the characters from the comic book, because, well, the toy creators, the people at Playmates Toys who worked on putting these things together and making them look the way they do, only had the comic book to go off of. They only had, like, pages from those comics, because the cartoon wasn't out yet. So we had the comics first, which were a lot darker and a lot more brooding and brutal. And in the comic books, this is something that a lot of people already know, especially people who've watched that episode of The Toys That Made Us, again, not sponsored, was that in the very first issue, they killed off the Shredder. But then later on they brought him back for the cartoon, I think. Well, obviously they brought him back for the cartoon, but I think they might have also brought him back in the comics, before Archie Comics took over the license or whatever happened. Sorry if I'm just kind of stepping over all the mythos, and sorry if there's like some even more dedicated Turtles comic book fans in the audience who are like, "You're mucking it up, you're screwing it up. I'm gonna tell you what, boy," typing on their keyboards and stuff. I doubt it's gonna happen. Not many people are watching these videos. But anyway, yeah. So the original comic book was a lot darker. And originally, I think they were going to have the cartoon be like that, have more of an edge to it. But of course, certain people got irritated by the fact of, the turtles running around using weapons because, oh no, if little Billy sees Michelangelo running around with nunchucks, he's going to and smacking people on the head, he's going to think it's okay that he can do that. That he can just run out and grab a pair of nunchucks out of the street and just start going whapping people, saying, "Hi, you're a bad guy. Whoosh, cowabunga, turtle power." And they got all up in a tizzy about that. And because of that, well, I might be getting my facts mixed up. I might be thinking about how in the United Kingdom, aka Europe, they did not like Michelangelo using his nunchucks, so a lot of the time there were edits made to the cartoon specifically for the United Kingdom and Europe, where Michelangelo and his use of nunchucks and stuff was basically just taken out as much as possible. Also, on that same note, in the United Kingdom, Playmates Toys had to change the name on the cards and in the show from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, because apparently the word ninja was just, too violent of a word. So they were like, nope. If you want to have that over here, lad, you can't put the word ninja in there. You got to change that to hero. And I'm so sorry about that. I swear to goodness, I don't usually do impressions of British people, but when I do, apparently I sound like Ringo Starr from the Beatles. Anyway, they basically said it has to be, you got to change that or you can't have that here, so they changed the title over in that area of the world. And they made all those edits like I was saying. My voice is trying to go out once again. Pardon. Oh, excuse me. Was not intending to burp on camera. That's like, 3 now? Anyway. So getting back to this. Okay, where was I? The comic spawned the toys. The toys spawned the cartoon because Playmates Toys wanted to have a tie-in cartoon. So they got Fred Murakami Wolf Swenson Studios to put together a cartoon which was a lot more, comically inclined, was a lot more humorous than it was these guys just running around and killing the bad guys and beating them up to a bloody pulp with their weapons. So, yeah. Oh, another very interesting thing regarding the toys. Initially, when they released these guys, they made all of the toys with a gummy, hollow rubber head, like Michelangelo here. But in later runs, when they went back and put the toy, made more toys to keep up with demand, they went ahead and gave the figures a nice, solid plastic head, like this version of Donatello here. The soft-headed ones are a lot harder to get. Well, they're not a lot harder to get, but they're more uncommon than the hard-headed counterparts because they only released those, I believe, for the first year of production. And spoilers, I have a full set. The only figures that were released in this set that did not have a soft rubber head were April O'Neil. She has always been released with a nice hard plastic head. And believe it or not, the foot soldiers. Now the foot soldiers kind of have I wouldn't call it rubber, but it's kind of a gummy head. Like, see how I can kind of easily move it back and forth? I don't want to be too rough with it and wind up snapping it off. But so I think technically they might have also used rubber on the foot soldiers, but it wasn't hollow. They couldn't make hollow rubber heads for them. So it's just like a bouncy ball, like a hard rubber bouncy ball. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it until proven otherwise. Anyway, see, I've got a full set of the turtles themselves in both soft and hard-headed varieties. Oop, there we go. I've really got to do something about that lighting. But now I've got them in the original soft rubber heads. Wait, is this one of my soft rubber-headed turtles, or is this one of my hard heads? No, it's definitely one of the soft ones. One of the easiest ways to tell the difference between a hard head and a soft head, hopefully you'll be able to see it fairly well on this camera with this lighting, but there's a seam running along the side of the head on these hard plastic ones, whereas the rubber ones, these guys don't have that little issue. Let me just move his sword out of the way so you can see better. Another way to tell is the neck. Like, you see how, well, hopefully you'll be able to see how his neck is kind of flared out a little bit. It doesn't quite line up with the shell properly. Whereas the hard plastic heads, they line up with the shell more properly. The neck isn't like all poofy. And yeah. Oh, this was the other thing I was going to get into before I got myself all kerfuffled and mixed up. These toys were game changers in the industry, both literally and figuratively. What am I saying figuratively? These guys... Ooh, sorry, I just about threw Donatello off the table. But, yeah, they did so much with this line that no other toy line before them had done, I think. I could be off base with this. I'm trying really hard to remember all this stuff, but because I have so much stuff. And remembering all these factoids is not the easiest thing to do, because this is unscripted. This is me just talking. The phrase verbal diarrhea, that's what you're getting right now. I'm just sitting here looking at stuff and talking and expounding all of the knowledge that I have in my head about these things. So sorry if I seem a little mixed up, and sorry if I'm, seem like I'm being a little crazy and frazzled. But regardless, yeah. Okay, let's take that note, put over here, put a pin in it. One thing that these guys did is on the back of the cards, I don't know if any toy companies really did this before Playmates started doing this with, the Ninja Turtles, but if I'm not mistaken, the Ninja Turtles are one of the very first toy lines to have these clip and collect cards on their packaging. And that kind of became an industry standard for a while. Case in point, my macabre little friend over here on the shelf. Out of the way, you goobers. The Crypt Keeper here. Now, let's see. I know this came out around like 1993, I want to say, 93, 94. But again, I could be wrong. Hold on. The copyright's on Frankenstein here. 93, there we go. And a whole 5 years later, they were still doing the whole clip and collect card backs things. And another reason why I bring up him is this guy was not made by Playmates Toys. And there were so many friggin' toy lines at that point in time from so many other different companies that just were like, wow, that is a really good idea, and they just started putting those clip and collect things on there. And Playmates Toys is, to my knowledge, actually, hold on, I've got an example of this. They're still doing this to this day. Just give me one moment, I'll go get that thing and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Like I was saying, the whole clip and collect card deal is something that they're still doing to this day. Just the difference is, instead of being that big like they were back in the day, they are now, or at least as of the production of these Rise of the TMNT figures, about a third, maybe 2/3 of the card back. And yes, I'm one of those people who actually has collected some Rise of the TMNT figures. Because I am one of those sad sacks who's like, if that's a Ninja Turtle thing, I want it. Well, let me rephrase that, because I don't buy those friggin' uber expensive NECA figures, I don't buy the Super 7 figures. My wheelhouse is predominantly Playmates Toys released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. So if it's something released by Playmates Toys, Ninja Turtles related, I usually want it. Aside from some of their more expensive things that they're coming out with now, like their, I don't want to call it inferior, but their kind of lackluster quality movie figure box that they just came out with, I'm getting all over the place right now. But yeah, it was crazy enough that in some toy lines, especially ones that Playmates produced, even the vehicles had clip and collect cards. I kid you not. Right there, in my hand, you just saw that. And another thing that collectors, moving on to the collecting aspect of these things, there were the original 10, and because there were 10, the packaging had 10 images on the back. I know, kind of a duh thing. But the reason I bring that up is because in some collecting circles, and a lot of collecting circles, they'll refer to the original 10 figures, at least when they're still, sealed, still on the card, as 10 backs. And the reason for that is because you got your 6 good guys over here, and your 4 bad guys over here, aka 10 figures, 10 back. It's easy enough to understand once you know that. And as you can see, I happen to have about exactly half of the card backs for the original 10 figures. Got Bebop over here. I've got this Blue Stripe April. If you notice, the image down there has the blue stripe on it. And then, of course, I've got Michelangelo. And there we go. Master Splinter. And, of course, the leader who leads, Leonardo. Now, will I get the other 5? Will I finish the set? I honestly am not sure. I might just be happy having these ones. But who can say? Now, each of these figures, when they were originally released and when they were originally produced, came with a bunch of accessories. And they came on little weapons racks like this. Hopefully you can see that okay. Where the accessories would literally be stuck on there by these little tabs here. You'd have to break off the accessories, and then when you were done, you had yourself a nice little weapons rack. This one, excuse me, this one actually goes with Donatello here. But these guys would come with ninja stars. They came with these weird tonfas, I think. I'm not entirely sure what you would call these things. This thing. That made it worse. But anyway, I don't know what you call those. They came with fist daggers. And they came with pizza slice dagger thingies. They came with all kinds of stuff. Now I'm starting to just kind of drift off in terms of, you know, the conversation. Not conversation, in terms of talking. I need to rein myself in and wrap this up. So these guys were the original 10 figures released by Playmates Toys back in 1988. And these are not like the very first 10 that rolled off the assembly line. These are just the first 10 figures ever produced by Playmates Toys that were put out to the public. Trying to think if there's anything else I can really say about these guys. So I'll just do this. Let me know what y'all think of this little series down in the comment section down below. If you like what you're seeing, awesome. Let me know what you like about it. If there's something you think I need to change, if I'm being boring, or if I'm getting into the kind of lectural type of voice, you know, like Ben Stein, like, this here is Donatello, and he does machines. You know, if I'm getting like that, if I'm starting to kind of grate on your nerves like that, let me know in the comments section down below. Be polite, otherwise it will have your comments removed. And just let me know, what do you think? Are there things I'm doing right? What are the things I'm doing wrong? Is this a series do you think you like? Just let me know in the comment section down below. With that said, though, thank you all so very much for coming back and enjoying my content. At least I hope you're enjoying it. If you like what you've seen here today, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to be notified of future uploads once you are subscribed. Share my videos with your friends if you think they would like it, and if you're not sure, just share it anyway. You could be surprised. And with that said, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and all other configurations of being, this is your old buddy Oxleymations here saying, Cowabunga, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Later.